I remember the night my life pivoted because of five crumpled $100 bills. Rent was due in 4 days, my checking account was hovering just above overdraft, and the calendar felt like a treadmill I couldn't step off. I was a single parent, and the math never forgave me. Daycare, groceries, bus fare, and the kind of emergencies that don't ask if it's a good time. That week, $500 wasn't extra, it was everything. But I made a choice that felt reckless and necessary at the same time. I decided those $500 wouldn't go to survival. They would go to a plan. People assume freedom starts with a raise or a windfall. Mine started with a notebook and a rule. Every dollar I touched would either feed us or buy a skill, a system, or an asset that paid me back. I wrote a line on the first page. Knowledge and skills are the best investment you can ever make. Then I circled it so hard the paper thinned. I didn't have time for fantasies. I needed a repeatable way to trade time for something that multiplied when I slept. Those first weeks were a rough draft of a new life. I carved 2 hours a day out of air. Early mornings, late nights, bus rides, lunch breaks. I studied marketable skills I could learn free or nearly free. Basic coding, spreadsheets, service business operations, and financial storytelling. The plain English way to show how money moves through a life. I picked paths where people were already paying for solutions and where a solo operator could start small. Hook, build, deliver, get paid, improve. That was the loop. The $500 went into 3 buckets. First, better tools. A used laptop that wouldn't die mid-call, and a refurbished phone with an honest battery. Second, knowledge. A handful of paid courses to accelerate what free resources taught slowly. Third, runway. A tiny cushion to survive slow first sales without quitting. Every purchase had to answer one question. Will this lower my cost to earn the next dollar? If it didn't, it waited. I built a routine that made quitting optional instead of automatic. Mornings were for learning, frameworks, templates, and examples. Afternoons were for pitching, emails, DMs, walking into places that still prefer face-to-face. Nights were for delivering, finishing what I promised so referrals could start whispering my name. When I felt fear spiking, I opened the notebook, read the line about knowledge and skills, and reminded myself that survival without growth just resets the same emergency a month later. Chapter 2. The First Proof. My first product wasn't fancy. It was a practical service anyone could understand. A scheduling and shift swap solution for small teams, delivered as software plus hands-on setup. I didn't try to solve everything. I promised one outcome, fewer no-shows and faster approvals, and charged less than the cost of a single missed shift. I called it ShiftBuddy, not because I wanted to be clever, but because plain names remove friction. I already knew the pain. Midnight group texts, paper schedules that disappeared, managers tied to their phones during dinner. I mapped one clean path. Worker requests a swap, one person accepts, manager approves with a single tap, and everyone sees the update. No new hires, no process overhaul, just fewer fires. My pitch was a sentence. I cut your swap chaos in half this week, or you don't pay. Heads nodded because that was their Tuesday, not my theory. The first client came from a warm intro. The second came from a cold walk-in and a 10-minute demo on a break room table. I didn't talk features. I pulled a real schedule, ran a live swap, and asked, would this have saved you yesterday? When they said yes, I shut up and did paperwork. I bundled setup, training, and support so nobody felt abandoned. When something broke, I answered fast and owned it. That, more than code, was the product. Revenue trickled, then stacked. I tracked everything in a stupidly simple sheet: new trials, active locations, average revenue per location, churn, and reasons for leaving, always written in the customer's words. When 3 managers told me notifications were too loud, I built quiet hours and digest options. When a regional asked for a multi-location view, I launched it in a week and sent a note. You asked. It's live. Iteration wasn't a slogan, it was a receipt. I learned to speak in outcomes and numbers without jargon. You've had 8 last-minute gaps this month. After we turned on partial swaps, you had 3. That saved 25 hours of scrambling, about $600 in overtime, and 4 angry texts you didn't have to send. Managers don't want inspiration. They want calm. Calm is a line item and a feeling, and if you can sell both, they'll keep you. The flywheel was small but real. Deliver value, ask for a testimonial, use it to sell the next client, log every objection, improve the product, repeat. I priced fairly, not desperately. Too cheap says, maybe it doesn't work. Too expensive delays trust. I chose a price that felt like a no-brainer to test and a relief to keep. Chapter 3. Scale and systems momentum is brittle if it depends on willpower. I wrote policies on a good day so I could follow them on a bad one. When a platform change broke logins, I didn't point fingers. I wrote the apology, shipped the fix, and added tests that screamed before production did. When a client churned because a new boss wanted fewer vendors, I integrated with their scheduler instead of fighting to replace it. Stubborn on the problem, flexible on the path. Money got simple on purpose. Every dollar in had a job. 50% to operations and pay, 20% to taxes, 20% to reserves, 10% to growth. I didn't buy gear to look successful. I bought time and help to remain useful. I hired for judgment first, skill second. People who tell customers the truth, ship when it's boring, and write things down so we remember when things get loud. We built a tiny handbook. Say what you'll do it, and if you can't, say why and by when. I kept learning like rent was due, because learning is rent for a better life. I took courses in storytelling for business so stakeholders could see what I saw without squinting. I studied retention patterns and restructured onboarding to be one link, one flow, no confusion. I watched the data and remembered the faces behind it. Why did they leave? Is a better question than, how do we get more? Answers compound. Vanity stagnates. The hardest days weren't technical. They were personal. Sick kid, deadline, food on the stove, phone buzzing, and dignity on the line. On those days, the system saved me. Quiet hours for support with clear escalation rules. If X breaks, do Y checklists. A simple rule: never ship big changes on Fridays because weekends deserve peace. We respected the calendar. The calendar started respecting us back. Then something shifted. A chain pilot approved. We onboarded 20 locations in a month. The dashboard stopped being a hope and started being a map. Recurring revenue looked like a heartbeat I didn't have to beg for. I paid down the last debt balance that had been taxing my sleep. I took my kid to a game on a weeknight and didn't check my phone every 2 minutes. Freedom sounded like ordinary moments that didn't demand a trade. Chapter 4. Multiple revenue streams. I didn't chase trends. I looked for problems my skills could solve where money flows monthly and complexity doesn't drown you. 3 lanes emerged: the core service business, ShiftBuddy and ops consulting, a content and template library that turned our playbooks into products, and conservative income assets, small stakes in boring, cash-flowing ventures where I respected the operator more than the headline return. First, I scaled the service business with boundaries: clear SLAs, support windows, integrations over rebuilds, a library of setup videos and one-pagers so training didn't rely on heroics. Managers didn't need me. They needed repeatable clarity. We kept churn low by making success the default and confusion the exception. Calm compounds. Second, I productized the boring brilliance: onboarding checklists, SOP templates, no-drama scheduling playbooks, and a short course on how to tell a financial story that persuades without exaggeration. People paid because it worked the day they downloaded it. No fluff, no gated secrets. We made the material we wish we had on the hard days. Third, I took the surplus, finally real, and bought time in other forms. Small LP checks into steady operators with track records, a little dividend here, a modest distribution there, nothing exotic. I didn't need adrenaline anymore. I needed reliability. Freedom isn't a number. It's a budget of hours and a promise kept to a future self. Chapter 5. The turning point. The milestones didn't feel like fireworks. They felt like quiet Tuesdays. The emergency fund that stayed full. A month where the business paid for a trip I didn't overthink. A year where tax season didn't feel like an ambush. Net worth tilted slowly, then obviously, from negative to zero. 0 to 5 figures. 5 to 6, 6 to 7. 7 to a number that would have sounded like fiction when I was counting quarters at a gas station. It was never overnight. It was always today, plus one more honest day. People asked for a secret, and I gave them habits. Start so small you can't fail. Make money solving today's pain, not tomorrow's fantasy. Price in a way that buys you trust. Write policies when you're calm. Teach what you learn while it's fresh. Respect your energy like it's inventory. Don't let shame about starting late charge you compound interest. Track truth, not hope. I kept the line on the first page of the notebook and read it out loud every time a decision started to wobble. Knowledge and skills are the best investment you can ever make. When the account balances grew, I didn't stop learning. Money fixes money problems. Skill fixes almost everything else. The day freedom arrived snuck up on me. I walked my kid to school without checking Slack in the crosswalk. I made coffee slow. I looked at the dashboard and felt bored, which is another way of saying stable. I opened the calendar and saw a white space I didn't rush to fill. I texted a friend and said, "Pick a Tuesday," because Tuesday had stopped belonging to emergencies. That was the moment. Not a sports car. A Tuesday. Mine. Chapter 6. True Freedom. The night it hit me wasn't a celebration. It was closing time in the office when the sun was draining out of the sky and the bats under the bridge were yawning themselves into the air. I sat with the lights off and watched the city tint itself purple and thought about the grease on my hands and the hum of the grill and the milk crate by the back door where I made a promise to myself. I thought about the rejections that felt like verdicts and were just opinions, about the bug that cost me a night's sleep and taught me to test the things that matter, about the way people transform when you treat them like adults with constraints instead of obstacles in your way. I thought about how many times I had almost talked myself out of trying when the world was perfectly willing to do it for me. Real wealth didn't arrive as account numbers. It arrived as time that nobody else owned. It arrived as sleep that didn't break at 3 a.m. with worry about bills. It arrived as no I could say without panic, and yes I could say without calculating. It arrived as my kids seeing me relaxed instead of always on the phone fixing the next fire. I started mentoring other single parents who looked like me 2 years earlier, tired, hungry, protective of their dreams. I told them the truth. You don't need a degree if you have time and grit. I handed them lists of courses and schedule templates and the promise that if they stuck with it for 3 months, I'd give them a small paid project and real feedback. They sent me their first pull requests and I left comments gently and firmly and watched the light come on behind their eyes. I moved apartments, not because I wanted marble countertops, but because I wanted a window that looked at trees. I bought a chair that didn't hurt my back. I learned to cook something that wasn't a microwave meal. I took Sundays off more often than not and let the brain fog lift. Chapter 7. The Repeatable Formula. Here's the real story, distilled. Take the smallest money available, mine was $500, and buy the next rung on the ladder, tools that won't fail you, knowledge that compounds, and a micro offer that solves a paid pain this week. Document everything. Turn service into system, system into product, product into steady income. When something breaks, fix the cause, not the symptom. When something works, name it and repeat it until it's boring. Boring pays. If this sounds unglamorous, good. Glamour is debt disguised as urgency. Freedom is proof disguised as Tuesday. And if there's one line to carry forward, write it down now and circle it until the paper thins. Knowledge and skills are the best investment you can ever make. It's not just true, it's transferable. Start where you are. Today, plus one honest day. Again. I opened the app and watched a swap request flow from one person to another, to a manager to approved, and imagined 2 humans breathing a little easier because of it. Not a revolution, not a fortune, just a small, decent thing that worked. When people ask me for advice, I tell them what I wish someone had told me when I was standing over a sink with my hands in soapy water, deciding whether to spend 2 hours on a tutorial or watch the ceiling fan spin. Don't wait for permission. Start small and finish small things. Talk to people who have the problem you think you can solve and let them talk you out of your best idea until what's left is what matters to them, not your ego. Write policies on a good day so you can follow them on a bad one. Keep the main thing. And learn. Learn like your life depends on it, because sometimes it does. I still carry the old mantra in my pocket like a lucky coin. Knowledge and skills are the best investment you can ever make. It wasn't magic. It was hours stacked on hours, questions stacked on questions, kindness from people who didn't owe me anything, and a stubbornness that refused to take maybe as an answer to a life I wanted to live on purpose. The last thing I do most nights is close my laptop and look out the window. If it's summer, the heat rises off the road like a mirage. If it's winter, the cold sneaks under the sill. The city has its noise, and I have my quiet. My phone buzzes sometimes with a message from a manager who slept through the night or a worker who caught their kid's game because a swap went through on time. I smile. Not because I'm rich, but because I'm free in ways I didn't know I could be. I think about the kid on the milk crate at the back door, smelling like fryer oil, typing how to learn to code into a cracked screen. I tell him, across time, what he already decided that night. Invest in what can never be taken from you. Knowledge and skills are the best investment you can ever make.